Hey everyone! In this episode, Emily and Nicole sit down with Richard Patti, who is currently a PhD student in Sociology and Demography at Penn. If you ever thought about pursuing a PhD or going to graduate school, this is the episode for you. This episode can also be helpful if you find yourself struggling to talk with professors or are not sure what to say during office hours. Richard reflects on his own challenges mustering up the courage to do all of this, and provides some comforting advice as well. We also discuss the small details and moments that made us realize that we are FGLI, and also explore the larger sociological patterns that better explain why we are who we are. Spoiler alert, the way we FGLI students were raised also has an effect on our behavior and our decisions. Hopefully, by understanding all of this, it can help us contextualize all of our experiences and discover what success means to us.
Welcome back to the FGLI podcast. My name is Emily.
I'm Nicole.
And today we are joined with Richard Patti, currently a PhD candidate in sociology at Penn. How are you doing today, Richard?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. Okay, so do you want to start with an icebreaker first?
Alright, yeah, we have a little icebreaker here just to start us off. So, in light of the holiday season, if you could create a holiday, what would it be called and how would people celebrate it?
If I could create a holiday. I forgot to look at that question. I don't know. I think that creating a holiday to mark the end of the school year, I think that should be celebrated more. Let's call it maybe the week before the 4th of July, just a complete blowout for people ending school. Because when you get out of school, you want to go nuts. Essentially, it's a big weight off your shoulders. You can have a huge party. I think everyone who has jobs should be given the day off. They could spend it with their kids and their families, and the teachers could get in on it too. I think everyone's really glad when school's over for the year, and to celebrate that, I don't know how it will be celebrated, but that's basically all the pent-up energy that you've had from 9 months.
So is it kind of like Labor Day, but like pre-Labor Day?
Yeah, so... Yeah, I think pre-Labor Day. So June... I don't know when schools get out. It would have to be a universally agreed upon date.
Oh, so it's only for colleges and universities, or is it just also
I think elementary school too. So that's where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
I feel like June would be kind of a June.
Yeah.
June... I feel like June 19th, you're running into Juneteenth.
Yeah.
June 23rd, maybe.
Okay.
That's a lot of holidays in a row with the 4th of July.
Yeah, that's true.
Work that out logistically.
Yeah. Okay. Richard, so before we start with the episode, or get into the nitty-gritty, would you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Richard, as you all know. I'm a 5th-year PhD candidate in the Sociology and Demography graduate groups at Penn. I'm also doing a statistics master's at Wharton. I do research on health, just anything related to health, but mostly how race, ethnicity, nativity, family legal status shape health over the life course or at certain points in time. That's the topic of my dissertation. Currently applying for jobs, so we're seeing how that's going. Want to be an assistant professor somewhere. I don't care where, just any place that'll let me teach full-time. Excited to do that. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. Go Bills, for a huge family. Enjoy running and biking around Philly. What else do I like to do besides school? I enjoy wagering on sporting events, playing cards for money, and yeah, those are really my hobbies. I don't lead a very exciting life, but a few things. That's about it.
Yeah, those are all great. And then, regarding the topic of especially your dissertation and about sociology, was there any specific event or instance in your life that sparked your interest in sociology before pursuing the major and PhD? And if so, would you be open to telling us a bit more about it?
Sure. So, I don't know, I went into college undecided on my major, really no idea what I wanted to do. I took an anthropology class in high school, which was very interesting, and it was completely different from any other class I'd taken. It's a completely different line of thinking. I'm just trying to find these human universals. So I took like an introduction to cultural anthropology at SUNY Buffalo. And then the same teacher in high school also taught a sociology class that I didn't get to take, and I wound up taking that, like, this introduction to sociology. And I saw some overlap between those two ideas. Just trying to find these universal things that make us human. That's more anthropology, but sociology as well to an extent, just like post-industrialized. I think sociology is interesting because it says that, like, you matter, but just kind of, in the sense that, like, you're an individual, like, your story is relevant, right? Your story is relevant and it matters, and it's very key to who you are, and that should be taken into account. But it really only matters in the sense that it's part of a larger puzzle that we can help use to figure things out. So for a while I worked as a youth minister, and I saw that kind of problem in kids. Of, you either were told that you matter too much, and that led to one end of the spectrum of very, I don't want to say entitlement, but if someone thinks they matter too much, you've met those kind of people, right? Think the world revolves around them. And then at the other end, you got people who don't think they matter at all, which is also bad, because you have a unique intrinsic value by virtue of the fact that you're human, and we should care about that deeply. And sociology, done correctly, can kind of bridge the gap between those two things, of taking people off their pedestal, of they're not the only thing going on, they're part of a larger story, but also keeping in mind that these unique individual experiences, they do matter, and they do add up. So taking that class wasn't no like revelation moment, no light shining down from the sky, no like, oh my gosh, this is when it clicked, but just like a steady period of being exposed to this discipline and seeing what you could do with it was kind of a gradual journey. I wish there was an event. I wish I had an awesome story to say, but it was just kind of just over my college career, seeing what could I do with this.
Yeah, I feel like that's like really interesting because I've never like thought about sociology in that way, or how it like, I guess, like changes people's perspective on like life and like themselves in general. Because I kind of just thought of sociology as kind of like this study where you kind of just like look at like different phenomenons and then just like using it to explain what happens in life, rather than like kind of like using it to like put, I guess it's like somewhat like putting meaning into your life, but at the same time it's like not really, like, I don't know, like, if I'm like,
I mean, that makes sense, but you can think of it just like you didn't get here by accident. Like, you made a lot of individual choices, right? I mean, you chose to go to Penn. Maybe Penn chose you. I don't know how that process worked. I'm pretty far removed from the college application process. But like, you didn't get here by accident, largely because of your own choices, but some things that you couldn't control. You didn't have any control over the school that you went to in high school, for the most part. You didn't have any control over where your parents moved or the type of family you were born into, but all those factors add up in terms of getting you to where you are today. And those large external factors, that's what sociology looks at and decides that these things are not random. There's patterns that we can use to figure out. Once we figure out those patterns, if you see that there is a certain systematic inequality that exists, of people within this certain social strata are having a disadvantaged experience just over time, and it's consistently happening, well, what can we do to address that? So trying to figure that whole puzzle out. And again, it's not easy because, again, humans are weird creatures. They behave erratically. But just trying to find patterns from all these individual stories.
I remember something, I think in my like intro to psych class, it was saying how like the human brain is always trying to find patterns, and it's like even in like the most like random, like if there isn't a pattern, they'll like try to like somehow find a way to like, explain like why like this specific thing is happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never taken a psych class. I've always wanted to, but just opportunity never came up.
I will say I like sociology more than psych, so.
I'm biased, but yes. Psychology is very individual based.
Yeah. I think it's too like, I don't know. Like I don't like the neuro part of it. Like memorizing all like the different parts of the brain. Like I can't
agree.
do that.
I agree so much.
Yeah. Aren't you taking neuro right now?
I am not. I'm studying cognitive science, so there's a bit of like the neuro aspect to it, but then there's also like the machine learning and the linguistics one. And right now that you were saying about how like the human brain is always like trying to look for patterns, that's also like something that we see a bit in like the machine learning component of like the cog sci classes. And I'm like, and it's really interesting that you can see that same thing across like computers, across humans, across societies as a whole. And my knowledge of sociology is like really little, but from what I know, it really like helps with, other than explaining human patterns, it also like really like it really like I just took a test on this yesterday, so my mind is still a little fried from my intro to sociology.
Have you completely wiped it out of your brain, or is it still there?
A tiny bit. I entered, I saw the test, and I was like, oh wow. It's a lot, my hand hurt, but it's all good now. But about how it keeps like updating, basically like every day, because like a lot of the things on the reading component of the test were about things from last year, from things from like 2 years ago, and then we also had things about the 1960s. Looking like, wow, this is really like connects like over time as well, different concepts, and it just keeps building one thing on top of the other. So I just found that really interesting for sociology.
Yeah, there's patterns we can recognize. Humans try and solve puzzles. And I mean, if you're studying sociology, you have to be a student of history to an extent, because like the old cliche, like history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure rhymes. Like a lot of the patterns that you see you can connect them. So a lot of people who do like comparative historical work, like my office mate Zhao, well, he's not here, but he does fascinating work looking at. I don't want to misrepresent his work, but he looks at colonial patterns of slavery like in Brazil, and believe it or not, like a lot of the stuff happening in Brazil and the history of Brazil is something that is mapped onto like patterns like colonization and the Americas as well. You can learn from different parts of the world, but also different time points in history. I'm not sure if I represented his work correctly. It's fascinating. I mean, just if you can see the stack of books on his desk.
Yeah.
Wow, yes.
Are they all about Brazil?
A lot of it. Like he does a lot of really interesting stuff with slavery, and he's just like a scholar of race and how we understand that. I mean, that's a kind of a universal thing of, again, just people trying to solve puzzles and put people into categories so they can more easily understand, which is not always the best thing. But yeah, he looks at fascinating stuff. I couldn't do it in a million years, but he can, and it's fascinating. It's really cool. There's a lot of different things you can do within sociology if you just orient your mind towards a certain question and a pattern.
Yeah, I feel like it's like you can kind of like choose your own adventure in like sociology, and it's kind of like, oh, you can go like super super niche, or like you can kind of like look at like the big thing, like you said, how it's like either you kind of look at like one like tiny thing and show how like I guess that one specific thing matters in like the grand scheme of things, or like looking at like the big pattern and kind of like something like connecting it back to like individual like experiences and lives and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any question that you have or any topic that you have can be oriented with like a sociology perspective. I took a sociology of food class. Like there's social patterns that exist around the idea of food and how we eat meals and what that means for individual cultures, people, and how that changes over time. Like food is this kind of universal thing that we don't really think holds these social patterns and social meanings. Like when you sit down to eat lunch, like there's a reason why you're doing that, like where you're doing it, what you're eating, and those can reveal larger patterns of, I don't even know, it's been a while since I took that class, but any topic you can think about in sociological, of connecting that individual to this larger societal pattern or social structure. It's very versatile discipline.
That kind of reminds me of like, I think growing up I always see like on Instagram or like just like social media in general, where like a lot of like Asian Americans kind of have this like very shared experience about like the smelly lunchbox, quote unquote, and kind of like how like I think like when I grew up, like growing up, I think like my mom kind of like knew about like that, like the whole issue or whatever, because I have an older brother, like 8 years older than me, so I think he probably went through it. So then when I went to school, I like never experienced that because my mom would pack me like American lunches. So then like I thought it was really interesting because like looking like through social media and people talking about these things, I'm like, oh, I've like never experienced this. It's like really interesting how like a lot of people share this experience, but then I haven't. And then like just being able to like, kind of like connecting it back to like sociology, or how like this is like a bigger sort of like thing and not just like people being mean, but yeah.
I mean, just the idea of an American lunch, like that's a, I mean, who determines what's an American lunch and what's a not American lunch? Like what's the, at what point do you cross over from not being American lunch? That's just a, you know, social constructionism and all that.
On the topic of I guess like topics and like themes in sociology, how did you choose what you're like studying right now with like race and like demography and like social status?
Yeah, I originally came in interested in how neighborhoods affect kind of all aspects of your life. So, I mean, like where I grew up had a large influence on the fact that I grew up 10 minutes away from SUNY Buffalo. So I was able to go there, not wind up in debt, and still be with family. I was very lucky to be born in an area that has a good public school system, so I didn't have to pay for quality schooling. And also within that, like a lot of different ways in which neighborhoods can affect your health as well. So I took a neighborhoods and health class. I thought that was really interesting. I think a large part of my research statement at Penn was like how neighborhoods affect you. And then I came into Penn, and the difficulty with researching neighborhoods is that you need spatial data, and spatial data is not super easy to access and come by because it's geocoded and you got to fill out these restricted data forms. And so I moved away, I don't want to say laziness, let's say the path of least resistance in determining like these place-based effects in health. I think the idea of just where you live affecting health is very interesting. And then when looking at this pattern, like very specific, like neighborhood and health, I thought that these different health patterns, like that was something that was worth exploring. I think the first paper I did, like specifically oriented around health, was looking at immigrant families and how that could influence health patterns. Oh, so I probably should have mentioned I took a bunch of sociology and immigration classes, and growing up in a time when, so I was in college during the 2016 election, like I was an undergrad, so just the general climate of fear around what it means for people who do not have citizenship status, and then I'm taking an immigration class in 2020 of just what that meant for how that changed. And I thought it was interesting, the idea that you could be living in a household where everyone's a citizen except for one person. And so how does that change how you approach accessing resources? How does that change how you live your daily life? And how does that change just like the mental strain that it could take on you? Because if you are a U.S. citizen, in theory, you don't really have anything to worry about in terms of being deported or or that kind of stressor that's in your life. But if you're living with someone who does, that's interesting. Well, maybe not interesting is not the right word for that. How much does that affect your daily life or just your mental health? So getting into that idea, I wound up doing a paper about state immigration policies and what that means for health. So I was able to find data that group people by race, ethnicity, and citizenship, and then the citizenship status of people in their households. And for instance, if a state passes a show me your papers law, like does that affect the mental health of people within that specific state? And if on the other end, if states pass this accommodating policy, where if they expand health insurance for immigrant families, like that's a signal about how the state is going to treat immigrants of different statuses. So again, we found that just any accommodating policy or just broad accommodating policy is going to affect the mental health of everyone in the state, regardless of citizenship status. It's a signal. And then any restricted policy is also affecting the health, but just in a poor way, and that's across all different statuses. And then expanding on that of how do those effects change over time? So then just mapping aging trajectories based on race, ethnicity, citizenship. How do individual stressors pattern physiological health? So I have biomarker data that's what I was working on there. I'm just trying to categorize over time, do specific races and people from different citizenship status, do they experience these individual level stressors translating to physiological outcomes? Are those patterns different? So this is I've moved more into like the population health aspect of that, but still keeping in mind that, I mean, my second paper is looking at specific neighborhood characteristics. So I came full circle to eventually getting neighborhoods back into my work. Just like perception of how I perceive my neighborhood in terms of, is there disorder? Is there crime? Is there constant street noise? Is there traffic? And does that take a mental toll? So, I don't know, the route I've taken is more circuitous. I came with a general idea of what I wanted to study, pivoted to health in general, came back to neighborhoods a little bit, and then just found that the population health aspect could help me answer the questions that I was interested in. I wouldn't say that my pattern of deciding what to write my dissertation on was very typical. A lot of people that came in here had an idea, found a faculty advisor to address the question, and made that linear path. I came around during 2020, so my experience with advising and advisors was a little different. It was a little more self-directed, and by self-directed I mean no direction. So eventually I came here and had a couple of great advisors pointing me in the right direction in terms of data sets and things that could be promising. So yeah, that's how I wound up where I am. Again, it sounded very disjointed because it very much was disjointed.
Oh yeah, no, I was just thinking about how, as you have said, you started 5 years ago your dissertation, so that was 2020, end of 2019. I'm thinking a lot of your dissertation is health-based, population-based, and just trying to think how did it work, especially during the COVID era, where it was so hard to just get people in a group, or even the health, all of the health issues, everything that was going on was so different than the normal.
Yeah, so I really started writing my dissertation in 2022 or 2023. The first couple of years was mainly taking classes and thinking about ideas. So the research I do is completely quantitative. I describe it as I'm a non-people person who studies people by not talking to people. So large data sets and running models, and sometimes it can be very... when dealing with quantitative data, you have to keep in mind that you're still studying people. So it is numbers, it is statistics, it is models, it is graphs, but again, to keep in mind that you are studying humans and studying individuals. But I'm looking at these large population health patterns from data that people have already collected, thank goodness. People who do qualitative work in the department, I don't know how they do it, but the research that they come out with is incredible because they're talking to people, they're giving these in-depth experiences. My friend Carlos went to Puerto Rico and lived there for a year, and the stories and the ethnographies and the interviews that he got were amazing, and he presented his research wow, this is phenomenal, I could never do that. But we can address the same question but in different ways. So fortunately I did not have to deal with collecting interview topics during the COVID pandemic. Some people did, and they pulled it off, which was, again, mind-blowing. I don't know how they did it. I don't know. Crazy. A lot of people had difficulty finishing up their dissertations during the pandemic because all their interviewers were on Zoom and they had to pivot and they couldn't go out to the field. And so fortunately I didn't have to deal with that, but definitely starting around COVID was a very, very interesting time.
I guess it's kind of a sort of related, unrelated question, but I guess as a first generation student, do you feel that kind of prepared you in navigating by yourself during 2020, or do you think there was any benefit at all, or no?
Yeah, so I didn't really have this idea of being a first generation college student until I got to Penn. I didn't know what first generation meant. and one of my professors, Nat LaRoe, made like a comment about like, oh, like you're a first generation student. Like, I am? As well, your parents go to college. I'm like, well, my dad took a couple community college classes, but he doesn't have a degree. She's like, no, yeah, that's the first generation student. I'm paraphrasing the conversation, but when she said that, then some things kind of clicked into place of just like patterns that first generation students have in terms of, especially when it came to interacting with professors or talking to professors or authority figures. I would rather, at least like through middle school and high school and even undergrad, I'd rather struggle with a problem or a question for 3 hours before I went to professors' office hours. I think I went to professors' office hours 3 total times over the course of my undergraduate time at SUNY Buffalo. So I was already very used to not talking to professors, which isn't the best advice. Like, probably should have talked more, just like realized that they are there to help you and there to help you along your journey. They're not I don't know, I don't really know what the hang up was in interacting with them, but just not, wasn't my bag. It wasn't my thing. So during 2020, I mean, I don't know what questions I would have asked if I'd had professors in person, but this was just very kind of old news. Like, I was very used to not having office hours or talking to professors or just kind of doing my own thing and trying to figure it out by myself. And I didn't really take a proactive approach in contacting really anyone, because that's what I was used to. Not a big group project guy, not a big office hours guy or collaboration person, and I guess the first year of 2020 was steering into that skid for better or for worse.
Yeah, I feel like that definitely reminds me of like me too, like in high school, where like I would never want to like talk to the teachers, because I always kind of saw like just like my classmates would have this like really good relationship with the teacher, and I'm like, oh, like why am I not doing that? Oh, I feel like it's probably because I'm just like really shy, right? But I think like kind of like thinking about it now, like probably I think it's just like because like my parents couldn't help me with a lot with like just school and like college in general, like how to apply. It's kind of like I just never built that relationship with like, I guess like that mentor relationship with like anyone that was like older than me or had more experience. So then I kind of just like, it was such a foreign idea. So then I was kind of just like, okay, like this is a teacher, I'm the student, and that's like it. And it's like they'll teach me about like whatever like they're supposed to be teaching me, but like that's like the most that like we'll interact. But
yeah, interacting out of class was like an outside resort for me. I mean, my introversion definitely played into that, but I think the relationship that first generation students have to authority figures is definitely different. Remember when it came time to like write recommendation letters for college? I needed 3 recommendation letters, and I had like 2 people that could plausibly write one for me, and then I wound up getting my 3rd from like my guidance counselor just because they knew my name. Like that's about it. And so even through high school, I didn't have working relationships with any of my teachers. And my guidance counselor didn't know me, but her goal was to help me get into college. So I don't know what was in the letter. It was probably very boilerplate, like, yeah, he's okay, I guess.
I would say that I have like a similar but different experience in a way, because for just like a bit of context, my parents, I am originally from Peru. My parents are in Peru, so I lived here with a guardian and I lived in Utah. It's mostly the context in which this all happens. But since I live with a guardian and she's not like had any kids here, and she does not have like basically like any experience with like the American education system stuff at all, there was like no one in my family that could like really like guide me and stuff like that. Like, I didn't know I qualified for free and reduced lunch until my last semester of my senior year. So I have been paid all of my like AP tests out of pocket, and they said, oh no, yeah, we could have waived all of those, you qualified for lunch. I'm like,
can you get like a retroactive check? Like, I have estimated I spent $1,200
like at this point. Like, I don't. So then that was also like in part because admin and we differed a lot. There were like a lot of issues in that school. So because like admin, they were like basically their own group, and then a lot of the teachers, especially like a few of them who really like heavily disagreed with admin, they were more like mentors for like a lot of the students. They formed like close relationships with many of them, and I feel like I formed like pretty close relationship with like two teachers because admin, one of them sent me an email yesterday and they misspelled my name, even though my name it's on the name of the email. I don't know how they made that. So yeah, you can see that my relationship wasn't the best with admin. But with some teachers that I did manage to like form like pretty close relationships, and they helped me through the years. However, they were not like guidance counselors. They did not have like extra knowledge of what, like how to apply to other places and all of that. Because like in Utah, the culture is you're born in Utah, you stay in Utah, your family in Utah, you live in Utah, forever. So while I did have like a more like close relationship with like a couple teachers, I still struggled to like ask for help for like things that were like academic. If I didn't understand like a math problem or stuff like that, if I didn't understand a reading, since I had a relationship with them, I would feel bad for asking them for like help like that. I would just get in my head. I'll be like, no, I can figure this out. They gave me already like the tools. I can figure it out somehow. So I feel like that definitely like impacted when I came here, and I still like struggle like going to office hours and all of that, like making like an appointment with a professor or something like that, going to the writing center. That is also like, oh my god, I could do all of this myself. I don't need to take your time. I'm so sorry. I apologize so much.
Yeah, I was always very deferential in terms of like, I don't want to waste their time. I should probably just figure it out myself.
Yeah.
Without knowing that like, that's their job.
Yeah. Like even like yesterday I went to like office hours for like my anthro paper, right? And it like, I think my question was probably like, it took like 2 minutes out of like my TA's day, but then I was just like the like act of like going to her office and then like asking her the questions, sitting down, opening my laptop and like just like talking to her. I was just like, I like dreaded it so much because I was just like, oh, I like don't want to do this.
And like I see that from like the other side now, that people come to my office hours, and like the interactions I have with students are definitely, I mean, you can tell the students who are like very comfortable talking to teachers and professors in office hours, and they come in as knowing that the teacher is there to serve them, which I think should be the approach that you have. Like if you have an educator, a professor, a TA, they should be there to make your experience easier, and you should make demands of them because what they're doing is important, and you have a right to an ideal educational experience. But then some people come in feeling like they are infringing upon my time. And just the interactions that I have with them they're not bad, but they're definitely different. You can tell there's a different mindset coming in. And I'm very cognizant of that. I try to make it very clear, like, I am here for you during my office hours. Ask me whatever you want. You can show up as many times as you want. And I try to find ways to make that clear. I don't know if I'm trying to find ways to actively like reach those students who know that, or who don't know rather, that I'm there to basically meet whatever the need they have in the class or otherwise. But just even the way that someone walks in the door, you can tell of that. Oh, I see me, and like, oh, that's how I walked into the 3 times I went to office hours at SUNY Buffalo. That's how I walked in. That's how I sat down, and I'm very apologetic of like, I'm so sorry for making you do your job. Like that's what you're saying. I'm sorry for making you do your job, which is, I did say that, but it's wild.
I feel like I've read about this. I think there's like a study about it, about like middle class kids and kids from like working class.
Annette wrote that, the accomplishment of natural
wrote.
growth versus concerted cultivation. More upper class kids, concerted cultivation, extracurricular activities, and interaction with authority as their authority figures there to meet your needs, and you should ask them whatever you want. Then accomplishment of natural growth, where this is very hyperbolic, but the raising the kids was go play outside, deferential to authority. There's a respect there. So there's a difference between respect and this complete deference, I think, and I think for me those two things became conflated. Like respect authority figures, that makes sense. So teachers, adults, doctors, there's a respect that should be earned there. But then deferring to them in matters of expertise, that makes sense, but not to the point where you're afraid to talk to them. And for a conflict of natural growth or working class kids, like that happened a lot. So I remember we read that book in her class, and I was like, oh, that's me. That's me. Like, just the stories that she pulled, or just the way the kids interacted with their parents, or the way that parents interacted with, even parents interacted with doctors. Like, for working class kids, the doctor would tell them something, the parents would be like, yep, okay, and the children would see that and be like, that's how I interact with doctors. Yeah. And again, these are very, very, like, extreme examples. There's obviously, like, wiggle room in between, but those were, like, the two typologies. But yeah, reading that book, Unequal Childhoods, it's like, that's me. Yeah, that makes sense. Or just the experience of standing in a classroom, like, having a question on a problem and just trying to overhear if someone had the same question.
Yes, exactly.
The person next to you asks the question, the teacher gives the explanation, like, okay, I'm going to write that down. Because I would have sat there, I've done that a lot, at least in high school and middle school, I don't want to raise my hand and ask a question. Like, I can do this myself. I can figure it out myself. Just reading that book, any first-gen student should read Unequal Childhoods just to have that aha moment.
Yeah. Who's the author again?
Annette Laurel. She's in the office across the way.
Yeah, we've studied her, like, for my sociology class, like some of her, especially Unequal Childhoods, on the topic about.
That's right there, actually.
Oh my god. Yeah, and it was so interesting seeing that, and like the day after we talked about Penn, and how a lot of like those things reflect, especially between like first generation students or stuff like students like in that similar group, and students who come from like that different social class, from like more who have had that experience in a way, and how that helps so much for like as a benefit when they enter like a university and places like that. How like the existence of boarding schools or like schools that really focus on like capacitating those kids for like the world, for like interacting with authority later, while other schools, like I'm just trying for example like mine, are really just like listen, don't really like ask that many questions, and this is you learn, you go home, stuff like that. Yeah. But it does not. It truly did not give me like, when I see a lot of my peers and stuff like that, I see wow, they know exactly like how to like dress to like every single thing. They know exactly like how to interact. The key questions, the small talk, they used to it amazingly. And I'm like, I wish I could do that, but then I see okay, it's not just not just something that I'm unable to do. It's just something that I haven't like really grown up learning how to work through.
Yeah, any conference or networking event that I'm at, I'm terrible. I've gotten better, but only because that's a very, very low bar to clear. Only because sometimes I spot familiar faces, but like any networking event or reception, for me, it's about grabbing as many like hors d'oeuvres as I can, cashing all the drink tickets, and then getting out. Even though everyone is there to do the same thing, I've talked to people they don't know, I have a very hard time just like opening up a conversation. I don't even know if that's a unique first-generation student. That's probably more of a idiosyncrasy about me, but...
Yeah, I remember, like, I think it was last year, I went to, like, this conference, like, in Boston with, like, my mentor, and it was, like, after one of those talks, I, like, was talking to her about it. I was like, oh, like, I thought it was, like, really interesting, like, I wonder if blah, 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 or about, like, the stuff that, like, the dude presented, and she goes, oh, just go up and, like, ask him about it. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, I cannot do that.
Yeah, in what world am I gonna go talk to this person? No way.
Yeah, because it kind of just feels like, okay, they're there to present, and that's it. And then I just think about these thoughts, and, like, it'll probably just go away. Like, I'll probably, like, forget about these questions, but it's just, like, the fact that, like, I think it's just really interesting, because she also comes from a different background, too. I think both of her parents are doctors, and it's just, like, the way that she interacts with other people is so interesting. But I guess also the fact that she is, like, 8-9 years older than me also plays a role in it, but I think it's just, like, it's so interesting how, like, her mindset is just, like, oh, yeah, if you have a question, just go talk to them. It's just, like, I think that's another thing too. I think I realized that like in research, like everyone is kind of like, I guess, seen as like the same like level in some sort of way, where it's kind of just like, oh, like if you can just talk to this person as a friend, kind of, which I thought was really interesting, and it was kind of like very foreign to me, and I like could not wrap my head around it.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to wrap my mind around the fact that we're at a conference, everyone's there for like the same thing, to present the research and find out about other people's work, and yeah, finding the common ground there is easier than you think, but just that initial opening the conversation is very difficult, because again, it seems like my experience asking questions was any minor or medium question is not worth asking. If it rises to the level of like near crisis or importance, that's when I'll raise my hand and ask a teacher about something. But like that's kicking that mindset's tough. It's just a pattern that it's just a habit of unless it's really important, I don't want to bother them. But people want to be bothered, for lack of a better.
Yeah, I feel like even in your class sometimes, like when you do ask like, oh, like any questions, right? I like sometimes do have a question, but then I'm like, oh, like should I answer it, or should I ask it? But then like I think after my 4 years at Penn, I've definitely like tried to like exercise that like muscle and like try to like kind of like put myself in that like uncomfortable situation, because after I do ask the question, I'm like, oh, that wasn't like too bad, and like nobody's like laughing or pointing or staring at me. It's like not that big of a deal.
Oh yeah, I'd never raise my hand in class. If the teacher directly calls me, I will have something to say. Like even if I have something to say, I'm just like, if they want to know, they'll talk to me. I don't want to bother them by raising my hand.
Just to pivot, I know you said that in your bio that you have 6 siblings and you are also the oldest child.
Yes.
How was that? Like, how was navigating that, I guess?
Oh, that was very, very entertaining. There's always something going on in my house, especially when I visit. Yeah, so looking at my experience, just like how my family was raised, so dad's an auto technician, mom's stay-at-home mom, so like I identify more with being like a blue-collar kid. Like as soon as you're 16, like you want a car, go get a job and you can buy a car. So 16, I started working at a car wash, doing detail work, very, very manual labor oriented. 6 siblings, just like a wide array of education and experiences. So I took like the traditional route of like graduate high school and then go directly to college. My sister, directly following me, she joined the Air National Guard, did some college, went to basic training, did some more training, went back to college, went during the pandemic she was an Air Force medic, so she was administering vaccines in New York City, came back, like it took her like 7 years to get her bachelor's degree, and she's never going to use it because she's in the Air Force, and I think she's in State Trooper Academy right now, so she'll never need what she learned. So college was just something that wasn't really necessary for her goals. My sister after her, again, college wasn't her bag. She went for a semester and then found a program where it taught you on-the-job, like, practical nursing training. And now she's a full-time nurse, no bachelor's degree. My sister wants to be a music teacher. She'll take the traditional route. My little brothers have already decided. So my little brothers are, I should give the rundown of ages, 28, 26, 22, 16, 15, 13, 12. So my little brothers have already decided that, Pablo's decided he's not going to college, he's just going directly into the Army. Probably because he saw my sister Tori do something similar. Christopher decided that he wants to go to college because he wants to be an officer, but he also wants to be a Navy SEAL. So they got that path pretty set out. But it's very funny to see just how they interact with each other, and I mean, you can imagine it's a very diverse array of personalities and just different life experiences, and just the way that we were raised, just hard work and like using your brain and common sense. I remember something that stuck with me is I think I was either like 4 or 5. This one weekend, Saturday, my dad had like this jar full of coins. He told me to count them and roll them, and he'd give me 25%. So it wound up being $7.50 or something like that. It took me all of like half an hour. The next day I helped him clean out the garage. This was like a 4-hour labor-intensive process of moving everything out of our garage, cleaning, blowing it out, sweeping or whatever. We'll get everything back in. At the end, he gave me $2. And 4-year-old me was like, what the hell? It's not like 4. I didn't say that because I was 4. But I spent like 4 hours. Like, I basically spent the whole day cleaning the garage. Give me $2. Yesterday I spent half an hour and give me $7.
Yeah.
But Ducky goes, he said you'll get a lot farther in life like using your brain. Like that's something that you should keep in mind. And that kind of stuck with me. Of okay, I'm gonna get a lot farther. And looking back on it, I think he was giving me a life lesson that he learned, because he almost went to school to be an accountant, wound up being an auto technician. I mean, works hard, provides a very comfortable life for us. But life's easier if you use your brain sometimes. Like, people don't value manual labor as much as sometimes I think they should. But just that hard work mentality common sense, using your brain, like those are things that were very emphasized in our house, and just the importance of doing well in school. The fact that we don't have the concerted cultivation lifestyle of clubs and activities and after school things. Like my sister does drama and theater camp, but all things provided through the school. But like my little brothers, they're the stereotype of accomplishment of natural growth, of go play outside. And like that's how they're raised. And coaches have approached my dad about my little brother's really good at soccer. He's like Forrest Gump fast. You point him in one direction and he goes. And it's comical to see how much faster he is than other people on the field. But the coach of the travel team is like, we'd love to get a commitment from him to play. My dad's like, yeah, I'll get a commitment from him, but you won't get one from me. Same with my little brother playing baseball. Pablo, incredible hand-eye coordination, great hitter. Travel coaches are approaching like, hey, my dad's like, we're not going to eat up weekends in the summer. He'd rather just go play outside. But now they have a landscaping business, a little guy's lawn care. And that doesn't happen without them just being around the neighborhood a lot. And what they've done, they've modded out their wagon. It has a rack for the weed whacker. It's got a spool blind for weed whacker. They modified a old bag for lawn chairs and a leaf blower. They modified it so it sucks leaves up and shreds them. And so they're all in on this landscaping business, because my dad teaches them of work hard. And they still have time to play and have fun, but they're so excited about every time they go rake someone's leaves. And the other day it snowed, so they used a leaf blower to melt the snow and shovel it off, and there's this whole thing. But yeah, they're small business owners at age 12 and 13. And I'm not just saying small business because the name is Little Guy's Lawn Care. But that's largely a product of how my parents raised us, of working hard and like using your head. And part of that might be why I didn't ask any questions of, well, use your brain. You can figure it out. Like you don't need my help. Work hard, figure it out, and the answer will come to you. But yeah, we're all raised like that, and every single one of us we're 16, got jobs. My sister's in the Air Force, just incredibly disciplined. Ray's working 12-hour shifts at the hospital. Sarah's working hard on her music. Eva can't wait to get a job. She's 15. She can't wait to get her working papers. Just how we were raised. I don't even know if it was the 6 kids aspect, but just seeing that, at least for the younger siblings, seeing the older kids all working hard and getting jobs, like they can't wait to get to work. Yeah, I don't know if that's unique to working class families or even first generation families, but the work ethic instilled in us is definitely something that's stuck with me.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I feel like all the different careers that like you've kind of mentioned that like your siblings are taking or like aspire to be in, like all of them are like either related to like your sisters, but like I wonder, like, have you ever talked to them or like wanted them to go into research or like I guess academics in general?
No, if you love someone, you don't tell them to get a PhD. You tell them to leave academia. I kid. No, academia is a very, very unique world that's cut out for people. Are very a different breed of person. I mean, I started graduate school because I had a bachelor's degree in anthropology and sociology and political science, and I had no clue what to deal with it. So I decided to prolong life a year by going to graduate school at SUNY Buffalo. And then I got a job as an adjunct professor. They said, you're great, but we hire full-time faculty as like PhDs. I'm like, okay, I guess we're going back to school. So it started as like prolonging life and not knowing what I wanted to do, and then realizing, well, this is something I enjoy. It seems like I really enjoy teaching a lot. Doing it for a career sounds like a good time. I guess we're going back into academia. So like I haven't had a full-time career yet. I'm almost 30. So that's not a very appealing lifestyle to most people, because ideally you go to school for 4 years and you have a stable career. Like that's the typical career path. But just the nature of the discipline that I chose of social sciences and wanting to be an educator, that takes a little more extensive training. So yeah, if Maria, I couldn't even imagine any of my siblings saying, I want to pursue an advanced degree. They all think I'm nuts, which I am to an extent. I'll acknowledge that. But yeah, it's I'm very curious to know like the return on investment for how long I will be in school versus how much money I will make is not very high. But there's you can't place too much value on how much money you're making. There has to be a certain satisfaction in what you do and finding a meaning in what you're doing. I find that a lot in teaching to a certain degree in my research. But Tori, she took 6 years to finish. In 6 years, I had 3 bachelor's degrees and an advanced degree, and she had a degree, and I don't even know what. But she'll make more money than me over the course of her life. She's got her Air Force pension, state trooper pension. She'll always have a job, always have something to do. Maria, everyone needs nurses. She'll have a much more stable career than I will. If Pablo fulfills his dream of skipping college and going to the Army, well, you always need that. Christopher's trying to be an Navy SEAL. I guess, Sarah wants to be a music teacher. I think I got her beat in terms of stability there. I do wish her the best. I think Eva wants to be a history teacher. So, yeah, I haven't really interacted with them about going back to school, because they would never do that, and it just wouldn't make sense. Yeah, I'd never give anyone advice of, hey, go into academia, it's fantastic. You have to have a orientation or proclivity towards doing that.
Yeah, I feel like coming into Penn, I definitely realized that I was talking to like other PhD students, and they were saying how like a lot of people, there's like a lack of PhD, or there's like not as many PhD students anymore. So it's like a lot of schools are trying to like create incentives in order to like kind of like tell them like, oh, like, hey, do research and stuff like that, which I find interesting. But
yeah, there's definitely I don't know, I haven't really looked at the patterns for sociology department enrollment, but objectively, if you look at the amount of time that you spend in school and the earning potential and the job security, or at least like you're not guaranteed a job if you have a Penn PhD. Like it's not, people aren't lining up to hire me. Like I've applied to 96 jobs so far. I've heard from 5 positive responses, like 5 follow-ups of, hey, we would like to explore the idea of you working for us. And that's after like 21 years in school. So you have to really enjoy what you're doing, either in terms of research or in terms of teaching. And some people look at teaching as something that they have to do in order to get back to their research. And I think that, I don't know how much of that exists at Penn, at like an R1 school, but sometimes the stereotype is at these research institutions, professors teach the classes because they have to, and then they want to get back to their own stuff. For me, it's the other way around. Like, I do research, so I get to teach classes. And again, teaching something I really enjoy doing, and I can kind of see a measurable impact that I'm making. I could go into industry and do statistics or data analytics or something, but I can't see myself enjoying that as much, despite the fact that the paycheck will be a lot higher. If I can make a comfortable life for myself, I'm happy with that. But sometimes it's difficult because I mean, Wharton's right across the walkway. It's a very different mentality and mindset. And I've taken statistics classes in Wharton and just been surrounded by people who their career goals are very different. It's interesting. Penn's a fascinating place.
It is. I feel it's like you meet so many like diverse people here, and it's like sometimes it's like a good experience, and sometimes it's not, and then like but everything is just like a funny story in the end, and it's like not the greatest like experience if you like meet someone not so funny.
Let me see. I think this one would be good about what is like one key takeaway from your education and research that you think prospective candidates for like a major or PhD may find valuable?
My education experience, I don't know about my research itself. I like doing research. It's interesting. I think for like prospective majors in like sociology or social sciences, the fact that you can ask and answer any question if you orient your mind the right way, I think that's an appealing part of sociology. Like any topic that you have, any aspect of your life, it has meaning beyond just the individual. And chances are a lot of people are experiencing the same thing that you are. There's certain solidarity in finding out about like your own life experiences. That's what motivates a lot of people's research who are coming into the program. Like, I had this experience as part of my identity. I want to find out why that is and how I got here and how the world works. So people researching, scholars in my department, or at least some of my colleagues looking at race and racism, like that's the experience they had in their life by virtue of who they were. Experiencing with legal status and citizenship, like they experienced that firsthand. My experience of where I lived just really shaped who I was a lot. I mean, if I would have grown up 15 minutes away, I would have been in a completely different school district. Not a great school district. I don't want to name check any schools from. I don't want to have any schools in Buffalo catching strays, but if I would have grown up in a different neighborhood, I wound up in a very different school with very different opportunities, and probably wouldn't have wound up here. Just a 10-minute car ride away, kind of shaped my life in a different way, and I just found that aspect very interesting, and that's something that was completely out of my control, but there is an explanation for how I got there. And if we think that there is a problem that exists, I mean, if where you grow up shapes your life to that extent, hopefully it's for the better. But in a lot of areas where people grow up, like the place where they grow up is nearly deterministic, that their life chances and life circumstances are going to be subpar. And if we identify that pattern and why that is, we can take steps to address it. I think sociological research should be done for the purpose of doing something for the greater good. That sounds very, very cliche. And it made me cringe internally to say that out loud. But we should be trying to make life better for people. Part of the thing that I don't really like about the discipline is like academic publishing. For me, I feel that journals are a game that academics invented just so they can keep playing the game that they invented. It's just sometimes you lose sight of that we're trying to make people's lives better in the research. You get so hung up in publishing and significance tests and wording something in a specific way or citing a certain paper that within that rabbit hole you lose sight of the fact that we are studying society so we can help, we can fix things, and not just talk about what's wrong, but try and act and do something about it. I lost track of the original question, but done correctly, I think sociology is a very powerful tool that we can use to make people's lives measurably better. Used improperly, it can become a caricature for certain political viewpoints. It can become a place where people just get wrapped up in their own research for the sake of publishing and expanding their CV and getting a tenure-track job and not necessarily doing anything with that. I think at the very baseline, sociology gives you a very unique mindset in connecting individual experiences to something greater than yourself. And I think regardless of if you pursue that beyond an introduction to sociology class, that's a valuable perspective that a lot of people can have of you matter, but so does everyone else. And it's not just about the big picture. It's not just about the individual. You got to connect both.
I feel like you said that very beautifully. Like, I feel like I definitely resonate with that, because I think, like, even like in my own research lab, it's like I'm not doing any sociology work, but it's like I guess with just like because I work in Penn medicine, right? And like I feel like even with that, it's like the idea of like the competition of just like trying to publish papers and like kind of just like trying to get data out just for the sake of it. I think definitely like I see a lot of like PhD students kind of like get in like they get lost in the sauce kind of. So it's kind of like really interesting where like I think it's like definitely difficult to kind of like always remind yourself that, but like I guess like how do you remind yourself that?
At least in the research process, sometimes it's difficult. Not gonna lie, it's sometimes very, very difficult when you're playing in our studio, trying to get a model to work properly, and run and get significance tests. And I mean, some people, I don't know if you're familiar with like how models are published in papers, but if you have a star next to your coefficient, that indicates statistical significance. So, for lack of a better term, sometimes I'm just chasing stars, just trying to get a significance test in my or a significant coefficient in my model so I can say something about it. What keeps me, what helps me to keep track of like what sociology is about is when I teach a class. Because at least I'm introducing a different way of thinking to people who, and I understand that not everyone's going to be receptive to that, but at the very least I can teach people to think about something bigger than themselves, hopefully. Or at least, I mean, over the course like a 15-week semester, if I say one or two things that are worthwhile or interesting that a student takes beyond the class, I consider that success to a degree. And I feel like I'm doing something of value there, of at least introducing a new thought perspective. With my research, sometimes it's difficult, just the nature of what I do quantitatively. I wish I made a more concerted effort to do more public sociology or community outreach, because used properly, sociology can be a very powerful tool for public policy. And I just haven't had that type of orientation because, it's not really my own, probably due to some shortcomings of myself, but just the goal of like getting a paper published, like that's how you're going to get a job. At least that's the mindset that I've been taught. That might not necessarily be true. Like, I don't have a job, so I can't necessarily say what it takes to get a job. But I'm not sure how much schools and colleges value. I know that schools value publications, and I have to publish these papers so I can get a job. And once I get the job, then I can teach and do what I really enjoy doing. So I see research as it's interesting, it's fascinating, it answers unique questions. But to some degree, for me at least, it can be sometimes a means to an end. In the end being, I get to have a class, and I get to find out what students want, what type of questions they want to ask and answer, and I can help them do that. So I guess just teaching and interacting with classes is how I keep myself within that headspace of, sociology is a tool that can be used to improve life outcomes.
Try to think if I have anything to like add to this, but one of the things that you like mentioning was about like the use of sociology within like the real world, or like real world observations, and how like that guides one's interests in a way. I was thinking about how I have worked like a lot of different jobs, especially on the customer service industry. I've been everything from a barista to working in fast food. But one of like the most rewarding jobs that I had was working with children. It was just like a summer program, and it was just like an 8-week summer program in which you just basically like helped a lot of kids. It was like a state-sponsored like effort, and basically like once per week you took like the kids to like a different place, like an aquarium, and or like a planetarium or places like that. And there are like some experiences from that job that stayed with me, because it was like a lot of kids who have never like really had the opportunity to like go to a place like that, and who I have seen wear t-shirts that had like different types of fish, or who I have seen like play with like dinosaurs with like dinosaur toys, and like just seeing how like they light up, and seeing like the questions that they ask that a lot of times I didn't have the answer to, because I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't know the answers, but like looking them up and like trying to answer them to like the best of my abilities in that curiosity, and like if like in any way I had been able to like help to like further that for them, that was just like immediately like rewarding to me. So I think I can see like how like academia and how like that ultimate like purpose of being able to like have your own classroom and all of that, how that's important, how that makes you feel.
Yeah, it's like a visual. I mean, I don't really get a visual confirmation from the people that I'm studying when I'm dealing with a data set. I get some sort of visual on the people that I'm interacting with when I teach. At times, as a youth minister too, like I was able to see like the visual interaction that I had with kids, and having good experiences like that felt very meaningful. Youth minister pay makes sociology professor pay like astronomical. But still, just the meaning that I got from that was there's something more tangible than money when it comes to a career. Like, you have to be happy in what you do. And I mean, just like studying like individual level stressors is part of my third chapter. Like, money doesn't offset everything. Like, there's a certain cost to the high salary if you're not happy with what you do. And some people love like they love the time crunches and pressure of a demanding job, and like they thrive in that. But I don't think that's something that everyone should strive to, just to, I guess, maximize your earning potential. There's so much more to that, because I don't know, it's your life ultimately. It's your life, and it's your life to live. It's not. I mean, money isn't everything, and I've slowly had to come to grips with that when I'm applying to jobs as a sociology PhD, wanting to be a professor, seeing the salaries and being like, "Huh." I live fairly comfortably in Philadelphia on what the stipend that Penn gives me, and I'm happy doing that. And just a little bump will be more than enough. So I just have to keep that in mind when I'm saying like that seems low, but I could probably make a pretty comfortable life for myself with it.
Just the last question. So, what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self. What advice would I give my younger self? I guess kind of tied back what we were talking earlier. Like, your teachers and professors are there to help you. Make demands of them. Make them do their job. Don't be afraid to interact with them. I'm not sure what would have happened if I would have utilized my teachers and professors more in my undergraduate career. I might not wind up being here. I might be in a very different place. But people are there to help you. So take advantage of that. I definitely did not. I'm still trying to do that during my time at Penn. I've gotten better. It hasn't been perfect, but I wouldn't be where I am without the professors and mentors that I've had here in the sociology department, demography department. Advice would be sometimes it is about who you know. So reach out, talk to people, build networks. Again, these are like very corporate buzzwords. networking events, LinkedIn BS, but the networks matter. Who you can count on and who you can rely on, or even just someone you can go to for advice or information. If that's a professor, if that's a teacher, if that's an authority figure, like make them do their job, make them demand a lot of them, because you should, and you shouldn't be afraid to talk with them or interact with them or have any sort of hang up about talking to them in any way.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Richard, for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking your time to share your experience with us. Is there any way people can get in contact with you if they're interested in learning more about like your research or just like you in general?
Sure. I think I have a picture on the department website, and I have an email address. I don't really do the whole social media thing. Probably find me on LinkedIn too. I should probably check that more than I do.
You said you're working on your second paper, so do you want to, what's the word? Shout out your first paper.
My first paper is under review at Population Research and Policy Review, so hopefully that'll be in print soon. Again, this paper was written, I think, 6 months ago. They got to revise and resubmit, so the second round of revision, and now we're sending it out again. This was after a rejection from another journal a year ago. It's a paper I co-authored with Dr. Courtney Bowen, who used to be at Penn, but now she's at Brown. So I think this just kind of speaks to my disillusionment with the academic publishing game. I wrote this paper a year and a half ago, we wrote this paper a year and a half ago, and it's still in the process of getting published. So I don't have any papers to plug. Hopefully that'll change in a couple months, but we shall see.
So for those of you listening, if you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to follow us on Instagram at FGLI podcast, and check out our website at figlypodcast.wordpress.com. For other episodes, you can also find us on Spotify. And if you have any one or topics that you would be interested in listening to, message us on Instagram or join our Discord where you can meet other Figly students and alumni. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was a great time.